Hi everyone, Jaren here from Imaging Resource, and in this video we are going to be talking about some of my first impressions with DJI's new Mavic 2 Pro while looking at some footage I captured with the new high-end consumer drone. As you probably noticed if you didn't already know, the Mavic 2 Pro sports an entirely new camera branded with Hasselblad. It's a 1-inch sensor capable of, what DJI states, 14 stops of dynamic range. The 1-inch sensor is considerably larger than the previous sensor sizes found in the original Mavic, the Mavic Air, and even in the Phantom 4. In fact, looking at the specs of the sensor, it looks very similar to the performance of the Sony RX0, which would make it a rather impressive little camera to put on a flying drone. The lens is a 28mm equivalent f2.8 with an adjustable aperture up to f11. The rest of the nitty-gritty detailed information can be found over at imagingresource.com, and I've put a link to that story in the description. So let's get on to what it actually feels like to fly this drone. I've spent a couple hours with this drone in the air, and I have to say the improved battery life that DJI promised is indeed evident. If you're doing normal photography or capturing video from a single location, you're going to have plenty of power in one battery to handle that. Where the extra juice definitely comes in handy is with the new hyperlapse mode, which, depending on your settings, can take a very long time to complete. The hyperlapse shown here took me 13 minutes, so factoring the time it took to fly to the location, get my shot framed, and then shoot the hyperlapse, you're looking at about 15 minutes of time, which, on the other drones, might not leave you much left to get the drone back to its takeoff location. But with the Mavic 2, that's just half its battery life, leaving you plenty of time to do a lot more before bringing it back to ground. Another note worth mentioning is how quiet the Mavic 2 Pro's rotors are. My last drone that I owned was the Phantom 4, so I'm not only used to a considerably larger rig, but also one that is much louder. The Mavic 2 Pro, while outside, is really only audible from about 10 to 15 feet away, and within that range, it's not overwhelmingly loud either. It still sounds like a typical drone, like a wasp buzzing in your ear, but it's not deafening anymore. I want to briefly revisit the aforementioned 28mm lens. In stills, that's pretty wide. As you can see here, it nicely allows for me to get a lot of the San Francisco Ferry building in one frame without being ridiculously far back. But when I switch over to video, 4K P24, the crop factor is rather extreme. Now, I've not finished shooting in all the frame ratios and rates, but my most common 4K P24 setting, this is really quite jarring. I was not ready for that kind of crop factor. I also want to point out how much difference of a shooting experience it is in DNG versus video clips with this camera. The sensor seems to be absolutely stunning for stills, especially with that enhanced dynamic range you get with the RAW files. But it is less impressive when it comes to video clips, though still quite good. In my initial experience with this camera, I'm leaning heavily towards favoring the stills. Speaking of dynamic range, the Mavic 2 Pro offers D-Log in 10 bits, so here's an example of what that looks like straight out of camera, with an adjustment layer over it, and then compared to standard. I will do more tests in D-Log using different exposures to get an idea of where it will perform the best. It didn't respond well to the Rec 709 LUTs that I have, so there is more research to be done there. In terms of the Mavic 2 Pro's controls and how it feels to fly it, I am yet again impressed by DJI's development. This drone flies so incredibly smoothly with such ease. The controls are a bit more sensitive than I'm used to, so I'll have to either adjust them or get used to them as they are, but the Mavic 2's ability to fly is unquestionably excellent. Additionally, the range and connectivity of this drone is mind-boggling. Even the Inspire 2, and especially with my old Phantom 4, they have some trouble intermittently where I was flying in San Francisco, especially if you get far out over the bay. I flew the Mavic 2 just about 3/4 of the way to Yerba Buena Island from the edge of the Embarcadero and never once saw a visual hitch on my monitor or a single bar of signal drop on the controller. Some other quick questions and answers. Question: how long can you film in D-Log before you fill the internal storage, just in case you forgot your memory card? The answer is 11 minutes and 15 seconds in H.265. You cannot shoot D-Log in H.264. Question: what is the lowest shutter speed hyperlapse mode will allow? Answer: 8 seconds, which is no different than the normal camera mode. Hyperlapse asks you to give it an interval and a final clip duration before you can start shooting. In this example, it would be 8 seconds and then the final clip duration of your choice. But for the hyperlapse I showed earlier in this video test, I used 2 seconds and a 15-second final clip duration. Question: can you ramp exposure during hyperlapse? Answer: unfortunately, no. There are many more tests to run with the Mavic 2 Pro, and we'll be taking it into some more extreme environments in the coming weeks. But suffice to say, we're pretty impressed out of the gate with what this little drone can do. If you have any questions about the Mavic 2 Pro that you want answered, let us know in the comments below. For more information on the Mavic 2 Pro, make sure you keep it locked to imagingresource.com.